My name is David Taylor, and I'm an investigator with the Marion County Sheriff's Office in Ocala.
How long have you been employed in that capacity?
I've been with the Sheriff's Office for approximately 5.5 years.
And have you been detective for the last period of time?
Just almost 4 years.
Are you assigned to any specialized investigation case?
Yes, sir, I am. I'm assigned to the Major Crimes Unit, which is a division within the Criminal Investigations Division.
Did you become involved in investigation of a homicide in your county on September the 12th, 1990?
Yes, sir, I did.
Could you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you first became involved, where you responded to, and what you did?
Okay, I was at my residence, and I'd received a telephone call from our communications center. It was late in the evening. It was on Wednesday, September the 12th of 1990. I was requested to respond to a scene in southwest Marion County, which is known as Marion Oaks, and it was around 9:30 or so that when I arrived at the scene.
So can you describe what you observed when you arrived at the scene?
Okay, initially when I arrived at the scene, my first contact was with a patrol deputy who was on the outside of a perimeter area. He directed me in as to where a location of a body had been discovered. I went into the area that was secured and made contact with the deputies who were at the scene securing the body.
Can you describe what your duties would be at that time when making the determination that there was a body found in Marion County?
Okay, initially, or once I arrived at the scene and I had located the body, it was my responsibility to initiate a preliminary investigation into the circumstances surrounding, the death. I was able to examine the body once we were able to walk up to the body and find that the body was, or the person was in fact deceased.
Can you describe what that individual was wearing at the time? Was he clothed or unclothed?
He was clothed.
Could you determine from your visual observation, based upon your experience as a law enforcement officer, whether there were any gunshot wounds to him?
I was only able to see what appeared to be one gunshot wound, and it was in the upper left quadrant of the chest. It appeared to be just, a real small hole, and there appeared to be some powder residue around the wound.
Of course, permission to approach. Judge, approach.
Yes.
So let me show you what has been marked in evidence that says double Z for identification, the top photograph. Ask you if that's a fair and accurate representation of the person's body that you found on the 12th of September, 1990.
Yes, sir, it is.
Is that how he was clothed?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Is that the condition of his body as far as the blood stains to his clothing that you were able to observe?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Your Honor. Rephrase your please.
Did you observe anything about his clothing, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
What did you observe, sir?
They were stained with blood, or what appeared to be blood.
Now, after making a determination that the individual is deceased, can you describe to the jury what steps you would take in your investigation right there at the scene? What do you do?
Okay, well, initially, we examined the body. We tried to establish some identity.
What would you do, Your Honor, as opposed to what the investigator did in this case?
What did you do that day upon finding Mr. Humphrey's body?
I tried to establish an identity to the person. We could not find any. The evidence technician was with me while we were examining the body. He was making videotapes and taking still photographs. Once the body was turned over, we were able to find a gunshot wound, or what appeared to be a gunshot wound. Then we just sealed everything as much as we could, and I notified a supervisor that we had a person that had appeared to have been, killed by a gun, and to notify him, and also that he was a John Doe at that time.
Okay, did there come a point in time in your investigation that night, or that day, excuse me, that you were able to make an identification of the individual who you found?
Yes, sir, I did.
How were you able to do that?
We had been supplied with information, our patrol division, by a teletype or a BOLA, what's called Be on the Lookout. The county south of us, which is Sumter County, Florida, had an individual who had been reported missing the previous day on the 11th. The physical information was pretty much the same. We contacted the Sumter County Sheriff's Office, and they sent 2 representatives from their agency along with a representative from HRS, who was a co-worker with the person who was missing.
And did that BOLA reflect the name?
Yes, sir, it did.
And whose name was that?
He was Charles Richard Humphreys.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Not offered for the truth of the matter, sir, Your Honor.
That's your rule.
All right, sir. Now, while on the scene, we were able to make, was any identification made of the victim by any individuals that were known to Mr. Humphreys?
Yes, sir, it was. That is correct.
And can you explain to the jury how that occurred?
Once the two individuals from Sumter County arrived along with Mr. Jones from HRS, informed them what we had. They accompanied myself along with my supervisor to the location of the body. When the body had already been turned over, Mr. Ken Jones was able to positively identify the body of that of Charles Richard Humphreys.
Were you able to determine what relationship, if any, Mr. Jones was to Mr. Humphreys?
He was a co-worker at the HRS office in Sumterville, Florida.
Were you able to determine through your investigation what was the job description that Mr. Humphreys held with HRS?
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy. Objection on state federal rules.
Go ahead.
Mr. Humphreys was a child protection team investigator, child protection worker.
Were you able to determine in the course of the investigation how long he had been employed with that agency?
He had not been there, but just
Answer the question if you can.
he had not been there, but just for a short period of time.
Were you able to determine from your investigation whether or not he had any prior law enforcement experience?
Objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'll connect it up.
All right. Connecting on the rule.
Yes, sir, I did.
And what were you able to determine during the course of your investigation as to his prior law enforcement experience?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy, state and federal grounds.
Objection on the rule.
He was a retired police chief from an agency in Alabama.
Were you able to determine his approximate age?
At the time that we found him, I believe he was in his 50s, just by my visual observations.
So let me show you what you can previously mark for identification purposes as states EEE for identification. Ask you if you'd open the packet and examine all the photographs therein. Sorry, Judge, I didn't know.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sir, in examining states EEE for identification, each of the three photos, first the one directly to your right hand, that individual reflected as, can you describe if that's the same individual that we see in the upper photograph that states ZZ for identification?
Yes, sir, this is Charles Richard Humphreys.
Also, sir, in the next photograph showing the individual once again, is that the same individual as you see in states ZZ for identification?
Yes, sir, it is.
Once again, Charles Richard Humphreys?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay, now you described to the jury that you saw a bloody shirt with a gunshot wound. Can you tell me whether or not that shirt is depicted in states EEE for identification? Third photograph.
Okay, this is the same shirt that Mr. Humphreys was wearing the night that he was, his body was discovered in our county.
As is reflected in states ZZ for identification.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Now, sir, during the course of your investigation, did you come into contact and obtain states KK for identification?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right, sir, and can you describe to the jury what states KK is?
This is a fingerprints, and I came in possession of these at the main HRS office in Gainesville, Florida. I was requested to go to Gainesville to obtain the known fingerprints of Mr. Humphreys.
Does the fingerprints card that you have before you establish or have a social security number?
Yes, sir, it does.
And what was that social security number?
The social security number is on this card is 365-329108.
And during the course of your investigation, did you come into contact with anything that is corresponds relatively to the numbers of that social security card?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you describe to the jury how that came? Excuse me. Can you describe what that item is?
Okay. I was at my house. It was on a weekend. I had received a telephone call from Sergeant Bruce Munster. He wanted me to go to our office in Ocala to locate the Social Security number of Mr. Humphreys. I went to our office in Ocala, and I was able to retrieve that and provide that information to him.
Sir, now let me show you what is in marked states HHH for identification. And I'm going to ask you to open this up and tell me if you can identify this as the item you're now describing to the jury.
Good.
Break the evidence seal, if you will, sir. Could you move that ID, please? Excellent. Contained in state HHH for identification, sir. Can you describe that item?
Okay, this is a briefcase, and it's It's a briefcase that was collected and was placed into our evidence section at the Marion County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. During the course of the investigation, was it determined by your department that the first 6 digits of Mr. Humphrey's serial number worked to the combination locks of this briefcase?
That is
Objection,
correct.
Your Honor, hearsay, basis of knowledge, opinion.
All right, sir. Would you please roll the tumblers of that briefcase and try the first 3 digits of Mr. Humphrey's social security number?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay, basis of knowledge.
Objection, overruled. Go ahead.
The record reflects that the witness has rolled the tumblers, has now opened the briefcase from a locked position using the 6 digits of Mr. Humphrey's social security. Could you read for the record the digits located in corresponding number?
Okay,
Objection,
reading
Your
from...
Honor, the predicate objections still stand.
Objection, overruled.
May we have the running objection to all predicate issues in this trial?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, reading from left to right, the numbers are 365, 329, which are the first 6 digits of his social security number.
Let me show you, sir, what has been marked for identification purposes. That states CCC for identification. Ask you if you can recognize that photograph.
Yes, sir, this is a photograph of Charles Richard Humphreys.
Objection to it being published, Your Honor. Motion for mistrial.
Sustain the objection as to the publication. Motion for mistrial is denied.
Sir, now in furthering your investigation, did you continue to seek out the individual who would have shot Mr. Humphreys when you, well, what did you do next? Let's go into that. From the scene, you have the body. What is the next thing that's going to happen after you leave the scene?
Okay, once the investigation at the scene was completed, myself, along with Sergeant, I'm sorry, it was Captain Vinegar, we had traveled to the Wildwood Police Station.
What was your purpose of traveling there?
The reason why we had traveled to the Wildwood Police Station was that, based upon the information we had received from the Sumter County deputies, was that Mr. Humphreys was in the city of Wildwood the day prior, and he was in a capacity of working on an investigation in the city of Wildwood, and that also that he had stopped by the Wildwood Police Department to speak with some of the officers that were there.
Let me ask you this, sir, going back to the scene, were you able to locate any motor vehicle belonging to Mr. Humphreys at that scene?
No, sir, I did not.
Were you able to locate any personal property of Mr. Humphreys at the time of your investigation when you found his body?
The only personal property was a pen and pencil set, some jewelry. There was no wallet.
His wallet was missing.
That is correct.
And was there any vehicle identified as being that of Mr. Humphreys?
The only information we had was from the report that was filed in Sumter County that Mr. Humphrey's vehicle, it was not with, the location of the body, and it was presumed to be missing at that time.
Did there come a point in time when you located Mr. Humphrey's motor vehicle?
Excuse me, I didn't hear the
Did
question.
there come a point in time when Mr. Humphrey's motor vehicle was located?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Can you describe for the jury how that came about?
Okay, it was on, I believe it was on Monday, October the 15th. We had received a phone call the weekend prior to that Monday that a vehicle had been recovered in Suwannee County, which is up in the north part of the state of Florida. It was recovered by the Suwannee County Sheriff's Office. Myself and Sergeant Munster early that Monday morning traveled to Suwannee County and was able to locate Mr. Humphrey's vehicle and recover it.
In that vehicle, were you able to find any articles of personal property of Mr. Humphreys?
No, sir, I was not.
Now, let me show you, sir, what has been introduced in evidence. That states 43, and ask you if you can identify that vehicle.
Yes, sir, this is Mr. Humphrey's vehicle.
Now, prior to your obtaining Mr. Humphrey's vehicle from the other law enforcement agencies, did you continue on in your investigation?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, and were you able to recover any items that became relevant to your investigation in determining the cause of death of Mr. Humphreys?
It's just information that was provided to me from the medical examiner's office that he had been shot to death.
Okay, and what, if anything, to do with that information that you have?
Okay, relating to...
Okay, did there come a point in time that you obtained any information or personal property of Mr. Humphreys from any location?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you tell us when that occurred and how it came about?
That was on, I believe it was October the 13th. As you're going south from Ocala, you travel down towards southern Lake County. There was an area right on the Lake County, Polk County border. It was called Boggy Marsh Road. Initially, we had received a telephone call from the Ocoee Police Department stating that some property had been turned into them by an individual, and the property was a badge case, and it had the name of Mr. Humphreys in it. We met with the individual who had located that property on a Saturday. We met with him in Lake County. He drove us over to this area, which is called Boggy Marsh Road. He showed us a location where he recovered the wallet. Myself, Sergeant Munster, two representatives from the Sumter County Sheriff's Office, we searched that area. And during the course of that search, we were able to recover certain property that did belong to Mr. Humphreys.
Can you describe the property that you found at that scene?
Okay, some of the items that were found at the scene, we found a bumper sticker that had been like wadded up and thrown over into the ground. We recovered a map of Lake County. Recovered certain identification cards like you would carry in your wallet, like a golf card, a couple International Association of Chief of Police cards that had Mr. Humphrey's name on that.
Did you recover any items adjacent to any of those articles that day?
Yes, sir, I did.
What, if anything, else did you find?
One of the items that we recovered was a spent .22 caliber casing.
So let me take you back first to the bumper sticker.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what, if anything, was done in connection to the evidence gathering of that bumper sticker?
Okay. When the items that were located, they were photographed prior to us collecting them and putting them into a paper bag. Once all the items that were collected by us that day, they were carried back to our office where they were placed into an evidence section.
So let me show you what have been marked for identification purposes. That states B1 for identification. A series of 2 photographs and states B2 for identification. First as the state, triple B1 and triple B2 for identification. First as the triple B1. I ask you if you can recognize those photographs.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene of the bumper sticker on the top side photograph as when you found it on October the 13th of 1990?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay, and the photograph at the bottom, what does that reflect?
That is a yellow sticker. It's got blue or black writing, and it says Florida Association of State Trooper.
Okay, is that in
decal.
fact the sticker once it was unwadded?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Now, with that sticker in your possession, did there come a point in time where you tried to determine whether or not it would match anything about Mr. Humphrey's car?
I spoke with Mrs. Humphreys, and she informed me that there was, in fact, a Florida Association of State Trooper sticker on his car.
Any objections to what you're saying?
Did you physically do anything to try to determine whether or not that sticker would have matched the location on the car?
That we did when our vehicle was processed by our evidence technicians.
So your evidence technicians took the bumper sticker and they found a spot on it?
Your Honor.
It's actually a question. Go ahead, hand it over.
Do you know from your investigation what was done with the bumper sticker with your evidence technicians?
Okay, also it was processed for fingerprints.
Number 1, process for
That
fingerprints.
is correct.
Okay, what else was done?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
If you answer, I like keeping the answer. Go ahead.
What else was done with it?
That's, to my involvement, that's all I had with the evidence
All right,
sticker.
so
It
it was
was
processed-
sent to be processed for
Process
fingerprints.
for fingerprints, there you go. Okay. Now, if you look at state triple B2 for identification, now look at my specific under here. Can you tell me whether you can identify that item, sir? May the record reflect that the witness is now opening what has been previously marked as states triple B for identification, triple B2. Sealed manila evidence envelope. Thank you. All right, sir. Contained in states triple B2, is that the same fingerprint card that you read the Social Security from of Charles Richard Humphreys?
Yes, sir, it is.
When I say the same, that is an original inked roll print as opposed to a photographic copy.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Let me show you also, sir, what is marked for identification purposes as states triple F for identification. Let me show you first, I'm sorry, Your Honor. What has been marked as states triple A1 and triple A2, excuse me. I ask you if you recognize those photographs.
Yes, sir, I do.
So those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene of what you observed on October the 13th when you recovered the spent casing?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can you describe, without publication to the jury at this time, what states triple... Turn them on again. Let me do it for you. States triple A2 represents and how it differs at all with states triple A1 and why it differs, if you know.
Okay, during our processing of the scene, when we were down in Southern Lake County, we recovered, like I said, a spent .22 caliber casing. When we recovered that, I took a photograph of the casing prior to it being collected and placed into a prepper bag. And also, before I took possession of it, I laid down a quarter as a means, for measurement and to show the size of the casing and stuff. There was a photograph taken of that also.
Okay, and were you present when that photograph was taken?
Yes, sir, I was.
You the one who placed the quarter down?
That is correct.
Let me show you, sir, what has been marked as states triple F for identification. I ask you, if you, without opening the container, can you tell us if you recognize it?
Okay, yes, I do.
How do you recognize it, sir?
On the upper right-hand corner is the case number S90248811 with the date of 10/13 of 1990, and it has my initials, DDT.
And can you tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what item you placed within the bag that is marked states triple F for identification?
This was the spent .22 caliber casing shell that I recovered.
Is that the shell that is represented in states triple A1 and triple A2?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And that was found in relationship to the bumper sticker that you indicated was processed as fingerprint?
That is correct.
Approximately how far away from Mr. Humphrey's body were those items found?
It was, I'm not sure of the mileage, but I would say probably 40, 50 miles south of his body.
Judge Brown, everyone know?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, please the court, at this time the state would offer in evidence state triple B1 for identification purposes as evidence. States triple A1 and 2. States triple C. States triple K.
Back in the report.
Just trying to find Judge, please the court, if I can go through them so that there'll be
I admitted with Ms. Counsel to see if there's objection.
Let me show you, so it has been marked states triple L for this. Triple L? Triple L for identification. I ask you if you can recognize that bag.
Yes, sir, I can.
So how do you recognize it?
On the outside of this bag is once again the number, the case number of our case, which is S90248811, the date of 10/13 of 90, and my initials are right below that, DDT.
So would you open that up for us? Now, the record reflects that the witness is unsealing the bag by cutting it, which was previously sealed with evidence tape. Sir, can you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what was contained within state's triple L for identification?
This is a yellow sticker with dark blue writing. It says Florida Association of State Troopers. It's a decal.
Is that the bumper sticker that you found, which is represented in the photographs of state's 44, which is now in evidence?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Wadded up in the top?
Yes, sir,
and
that's correct.
Opened up on the bottom?
That is correct.
State would offer state's triple L for identification, Your Honor.
We get an opportunity to observe and watch it.
You can move to this item, please.
You folks have any objection to any of the other objects inside the bag? We'll keep this all together.
No objection to anything on the bag, Your Honor.
That will be received as marked. That's it.
This time, Your Honor, the state would also offer for evidentiary purposes, state's triple F for identification.
We'd like to inspect your own.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Your Honor, would it be necessary then to open up the bag for court permission?
Let the parties examine that.
May the record reflect that the witness is going to open the, will you open the bag, sir, at this time? May the record reflect that he's opening a sealed evidence bag, states triple F for identification. Please leave the top on. Thank you. Is this the spent casing that you recovered as described to the jury today?
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
Can you describe to the jury what this object is?
This is a spent .22 caliber shell casing.
Where did you find that casing?
This is recovered in Southern Lake County off of Boggy Marsh Road.
Is that item reflected in the photographs that are now introduced in evidence as states 47 and 46?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And you recovered this item?
Yes, sir.
Offer it, Your Honor.
No objection.
With the elevator, she can mark it down by the proper number.
States Exhibit 50.
Move the court the state will offer states double Z for identification purposes. That state's evidence at this time.
Counsel, hearing down this item. Is there objection? There is. There's the objection that's sustained.
Your Honor.
Item number ZZ will not be marked for that one.
Thank you, Your Honor. May these items that have been introduced in evidence be published to the jury at this time, Your Honor?
Yes, the ones in the evidence. Give the clerk ZZ.
And you'll hold on to that. Court permission?
Yes, sir.
All right, may the- Court permission, Judge, I'm going to start with the first alternate juror, the right-hand side, go to the back row, the left-hand side, and begin distributing. Excuse me, an exhibit as states double Z for identification, the top photograph.
Yes, sir.
Can you describe for them the condition of his pants pocket?
The left front pants pocket was turned inside out.
Objection, Your Honor, let's go.
Objection overruled.
And did you find any items of significant value on him at that time?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
It was just, like I said, the pen and pencil set. I believe there was a wedding band, a watch, and there was some change in the other pocket, I believe.
Find any hard currency,
No, sir, I did not.
dollars,
No, sir.
paper currency?
It was just coins.
Just some coins left in his pocket.
That is correct.
That pocket hadn't been turned out.
That was on the right pocket.
So only one pocket had been turned out.
That was the left pocket that was turned inside out.
There was nothing contained in the crevices or cracks of that pocket of value.
No.
Now, when you recovered Mr. Humphrey's motor vehicle, I know whether or not you were ever, during the course of your investigation, able to find any fingerprints on that motor vehicle or hands.
The vehicle was processed, like I said, by our evidence technicians, and they were assisted by the Citrus County evidence technicians. I was not present for that.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn of any fingerprints of identifiable value being found in that motor vehicle?
Objection. It's for hearsay, Your Honor. It's not matters within his personal knowledge. He's already said that.
Please object to that.
You mentioned a badge case was found that was identified as being Mr. Humphrey's.
That is correct, yes,
Did you ever
sir.
find a badge?
No, sir, I did not.
So this was an empty badge case, is that correct?
That is correct.
Objection overruled.
That badge case was found approximately in what location in relationship to the fired casing?
Well, the badge case was found by the individual who had turned the item over to his wife, who gave it to the Ocoee Police Department. It was within the same general vicinity.
Where you were taken by him to where you found it?
That is correct. He said everything was right in that area, right between the little service road, and there was a pond there.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. We're waiting for this time.
Any fire?
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
You indicated to the prosecutor on direct examination that two individuals from Sumter County came to Marion County to give you some information about this case in conjunction with a Mr. Jones.
Okay. The night that we located the body in Marion Oaks, like I said, we were in possession of information to come across the radio and through a bulletin as to where an individual had been reported missing. Our office contacted their office. They sent two representatives from their agency to us. Also with them was Mr. Jones.
Okay, can you give me the names of the two individuals from Sumter County that accompanied Mr. Jones, please?
Off the top of my head, the name slipped my mind right now, but it was the Chief Deputy, I want to say Matthews, and Jim Fussell, I believe.
When you went to the scene where Mr. Humphrey's body was discovered, you indicated that you viewed the body, is that correct?
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Humphreys was wearing a watch, wasn't he?
Yes, ma'am.
And he was wearing a yellow gold ring, wasn't he?
It was a ring.
It was a wedding band, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And there was a pen and pencil set that he had in his pocket, isn't that true?
In his shirt pocket, correct.
And that was a cross pen and pencil
Yes,
set,
ma'am.
wasn't it? You indicated that Mr. Humphreys was last seen in Wildwood. He was last seen at a motel in Wildwood, was he not?
Our investigation revealed, as far as I could determine, that's where he was last seen.
And in fact, you had evidence that he had purchased beer at the Wildwoods place where he was last seen.
That information was developed by Sergeant Munster.
Okay. Sergeant Munster became the lead investigator in that case, didn't he?
That is correct.
Okay. And eventually got involved in book and movie rights, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike improper.
Take the objection.
I ask the counsel be admonished, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Did you find any other personal belongings on Mr. Humphreys in terms of jewelry or anything of that nature?
Just what was recovered, like the watch, pen and pencil set, the ring, and there was some change that was in his pocket.
Some change, and that is all that you found?
All that was with his body when we recovered the body.
Okay. One moment. No further questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, Dave.
Sir, When you found Mr. Humphrey before he closed,
Yes, sir, he was.
let me show you, sir, Manfield Market identification purposes. State deposit exhibit.
Council, you view the items here. Keep that marking for identification so far.
Sir, let me show you what has been marked for identification. Once again, it states double Z for identification. Is that the condition that you found Mr. Humphrey's clothing in when you arrived at the scene? As it's depicted, it states, excuse me, double Z for identification, the top
Yes.
photograph of this composite exhibit.
Yes, sir, it is.
Let me show you what is marked that states triple M1 for identification. I ask you if that's a fair and accurate description and representation of the condition of the clothing when you observed it at the scene in relationship to the man's pants, belt, and zipper.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. When you came upon the scene, did you view the condition of Mr. Humphrey's pants as to the belt, the zipper, and the closure of his pants?
Yes, sir, I did.
Were those pants on and fully closed, or were they off in any way?
They were on.
Was there any item upon him that was not on? His shoes, his socks, anything of that nature?
He was wearing his shoes, his socks.
Let me show you what's been marked as states triple M2 for identification. Are those the shoes and the socks that you described to the jury that you
Beyond the
found?
scope of caution.
Next number, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
And let me show you what has been marked as states triple M3 for identification. Once again, can you recognize that photograph as a fair and accurate representation of the condition of Mr. Humphrey's clothing
Yes, sir, I do.
when you first observed it at the scene, with the exception that it has now been moved to the medical morgue?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Sir, can you tell the jury approximately how far off the roadway Mr. Humphrey's body was found?
Well, the main road that travels through that area as to where he was located, it's County Road 484. The area was an undeveloped subdivision. I would venture to say approximately 2/10 to 3/10 of a mile north of the main county road, which is 484. It runs through that subdivision.
Would an individual who was out in that field where you found that body be able to be seen from some distance?
Standing there.
Can you tell us, from your knowledge of that area, the visibility from the location where Mr. Humphrey's body was found to the roadway and other adjacent areas?
Okay, to the main highway, which is 484, there's a crest of a hill, and you would not be able to see County Road 484 from where his body was discovered. Where we discovered his body is at the end of like a cul-de-sac, which was a paved street. People drive back in there all the time.
So you know that personal knowledge, that people come in and out of it.
Well, I've been back in there myself several times.
Not the kind of place where you want to have a body left and be
Meeting, Your Honor. Motion to strike, motion for mistrial, motion for admonishment of counsel.
Would you, hesitate?
I don't think so. Thank you.
You can answer that question, sir. That's not the kind of...
No.
Okay, I will...
Motion for mistrial on the latter or denied. Motion to, the objection is sustained, no answer.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
You get the recross,
I don't think so, Your Honor.
you'll get those items that you have for identification back to the from where you made it. We got no further objection.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Council want the telephone number?
Yes, Judge.
Leave the number where you can be.
Sir, would you state your name, please?
Ken Jones,
Mr. Jones, where do you reside?
in Sumter County.
And what is your occupation, please?
I work for HRS.
How long have you worked for HRS and what do you do for them?
I've worked for him for approximately 8 years as a protective investigator.
All right, sir. Do you know an individual by the name of Charles Richard Humphreys?
Yes, sir.
What did you call?
I call him Dick.
Could you tell the jury, please, what your relationship was with Mr. Humphreys and what he did for a living?
He was my supervisor for approximately 2 years.
He was also worked for HRS?
Yes, sir.
In what particular division were you and he working?
In, child,
Objection, relevancy, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
Yes, your name.
child abuse investigations.
All right, sir. When is the last time you saw Mr. Humphreys alive?
On September the 11th, 1990.
When did you next see him?
September the 12th of 1990.
And where was he?
He was deceased. It was in a field.
You know, your approximate location of the field to the jury?
It was in Marion County, off of County Road, I believe it was State Road 484.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, sir.
I ask you to look at State's Exhibit 45 and ask if you can identify the individual whose picture appears there.
Yes, sir. It was my supervisor, Dick Humphreys.
Thanks, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor?
You may inquire.
No question, Your Honor.
You may stand down, you're discharged, you have no further obligation to court. You are under the rule of that if you're not to conduct testimony of the case. So,
Thank you, sir.
call your witness.
State and call Marv Stevens, Ron. Sir, would you please tell us your full name and your place of employment?
My name is Marvin Lee Stevens. I am employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
In what capacity are you still employed, sir?
I'm a crime laboratory analyst assigned to the latent print section.
How long have you been employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Next month will be 14 years.
And during that 14-year employment with them, have you been involved in the identification of latent and inked fingerprints?
Yes, sir, I have.
Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury some of your experience in fingerprint identification, palm print, latent, roll?
My fingerprint training, or information about fingerprints, started in June of 1976 with the FBI in Washington, D.C. I was a fingerprint technician, and I was involved in a training class for 3 months entitled The Science of Fingerprints. In this training class, I went through all aspects of inked fingerprints. This would be the classification, the filing, and more importantly, the identification of inked fingerprints. Upon leaving the FBI in '77, I then became employed in 1978 with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Tallahassee. I worked in the inked fingerprint section for approximately 7 years, going up all the way to a inked fingerprint supervisor. And then in October of '84, I was then promoted to the crime laboratory system. I went through a 1-year training program of all aspects of latent fingerprint work. And at the end of 1 year, I went before a board of my peers, and then I was found to be knowledgeable of latent fingerprints, palm prints, and then I was an analyst in November of '85.
All right, sir. Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about approximately how many occasions have you been called upon to examine latent fingerprints with known or rolled impression fingerprints?
How many cases?
Well, let's go cases. I think if I asked you just all, we're going to get up into many thousands.
Approximately in a year's time, I will work between 225 to maybe 250 cases per year.
Can you tell us whether or not you've ever been qualified as an expert witness in a court of law in fingerprint and or palm print identification?
I've been an expert witness 28 times prior to today.
And you testified in felony courts and circuit courts of Volusia County also?
I've never testified in Volusia County, no, sir.
Where do you primarily come out of? Which laboratory are you associated with?
The Tallahassee Laboratory, which is mainly the 2nd and 3rd Judicial Circuit in Florida.
Okay, would that be the location where you would have been qualified as an expert witness?
Yes, sir.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the difference between well, let me strike that if I may. Your Honor, I think in light of prior testimony, the jury has heard testimony on that matter. I will offer Mr. Stevens as an expert in fingerprint identification.
May we inquire there, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Stevens, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank
Do you
you.
need those items of evidence that are right in front of you there for your testimony?
I may.
Okay. You can testify about them?
Well, Judge, he wants a voir dire. He wants a voir dire, then let's ask about his expert.
Go ahead and get it all over with now, and then we can get to lunch.
Yes, Judge. Do you have any graduate training, graduate school training in fingerprint identification?
No, sir, I do not.
And your expertise is based on your experience, is it not?
That is correct.
No objection to the witness testifying as an expert, Your Honor.
May proceed.
Certainly, yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I object to the comment, move for a mistrial, move for you to admonish counsel.
Move for mistrial and clean it up, counsel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Stevens, if you become involved in an investigation in which you examine certain items of evidence purporting to be the fingerprint of a Charles Dick Humphreys,
Yes, sir, I did.
so let me show you what has been previously introduced in evidence. It states 49 in evidence. And let me also show you what has been marked as an exhibit states triple B2 for identification, which has been opened in open court by the previous witnesses. And if you'll please examine state triple B2 for identification, you tell me whether or not you're able to.
This is triple B2.
Yes, sir.
This is,
Number 49 in evidence. Been opened at the top, sir, in open court. Let me also show you, sir, now in evidence, it states 48 in evidence. Ask that you recognize that document. Do you need a pair of scissors, sir?
yes, sir, I probably will.
May I approach you? Yes, sir. Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness is opening up manila envelopes that were contained within states triple B2 for identification.
Yes, sir, I recognize all these items.
All right, but can you explain to the jury how you recognize stage 48 in evidence, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, I'm having a problem finding it. Sorry, Judge. I'm sorry, there's a lot of paperwork, okay, good. I'm holding a fingerprint chart that was within state triple B2 for identification, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have everything where it was removed from. You recognize states 49 in evidence, states 48 in evidence,
Yes,
and
sir.
all of the items contained in states triple B2 for identification. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you did with those objects in attempting to make a determination as to who would have come into contact with states? Forgive me, I'm sorry, good.
All right.
49 in evidence, the Florida Association bumper sticker.
In receiving these items, first thing I would do, for example, the latent lift, this is known as a latent lift. These are photographs of latents that have been developed on an item. First thing I would do would be to examine them to see if they're of quality for identification purposes. If that would be so, then I would go ahead and have them photographed for preservation. And then once a standard rolled fingerprints of an individual are submitted to me, then I will try to do a comparison to see if the prints on the latent lifts are then the same as from the inked fingerprint card.
And did you do that in this case, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
Explain to the ladies and gentlemen jury, how do you go about making a comparison of a known ink source to a latent impression?
Looking on standard,
We object to it being published.
Objection overruled.
looking on a standard ink fingerprint card, numbers are arranged from 1 through 10. This is meaning that the right thumb of an individual would go in the number 1 block, the index finger number 2, and so forth. On an ink fingerprint card, they have what is known as friction ridges. On the bottom side or underside of an individual's fingers, palms of their hands, even the soles of the feet, you have raised portion of skin. This skin, once you have a smooth surface, applied black ink, you have taken an individual's finger and rolled the finger, and then transferred it to a fingerprint card or else to like a white sheet of paper for the best contrast from black ink to white. You'll note, or there is noted on here, Galton details. These are ending ridges. It is the most common friction ridge characteristics that are used. Also, next common would be known as a friction ridge bifurcation. Bifurcation is when you have one friction ridge and it will split or diverge. The point that it splits is another part of identification. And the third part I will use will be a friction ridge dot. And a dot is simply a friction ridge that contains at least one sweat pore. Looking at unique ridge characteristics found on an ink fingerprint and then comparing them to a latent fingerprint that has been processed else out in the field or else maybe in my laboratory myself. Then taking the latent fingerprint, and like I say, if it's of a quality, I will then have a photograph made of it, and then comparing it finger by finger, ridge characteristic to ridge characteristic, finding enough unique ridge characteristics, then I can make a conclusion and say the latent fingerprint that was developed on any item would be positively identified back to the person that had their fingerprints taken on the standard fingerprint card.
Now, can you identify on the standard fingerprint card that you're speaking about whose name is contained therein?
On this fingerprint card, the last name is Humphreys, first name is Charles, middle name is Richard.
And did you use this in your comparison with the latent fingerprints that were submitted to you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, sir, did you arrive at a conclusion based upon your examination of the known fingerprints of Charles Humphreys and that of the latent fingerprints submitted to you?
Yes, sir, I did.
And that latent fingerprint was contained initially before lifting from states 49 and evidence the bumper sticker.
That is true.
Did you arrive at a conclusion, sir?
Yes, sir. On Exhibit 8A, which is a negative, this negative, which was a photograph from this bumper sticker, contained enough unique ridge characteristics that I could claim the fingerprint, the latent fingerprint, as of value for identification purposes. The fingerprint that is on this negative was then compared, and it belonged to the right middle finger, or the number 3 finger in the fingerprint block, belonging to Charles Richard Humphreys.
Could two people have the same fingerprints, sir?
Objection, Your Honor.
Within your expert opinion,
Objection overruled.
The uniqueness of an individual's fingerprints are unique only to that person and nobody else in the world.
can you tell us how you arrived at your conclusion, sir?
By comparing the unique ridge characteristics, again, like I said, they were found contained on the negative taken from the bumper sticker, comparing the friction ridges, as I mentioned before, the ending ridges, the bifurcations, and the dots contained in the ink fingerprints were also present in the latent fingerprint on the bumper sticker. Comparing these, looking for uniqueness together, there were enough of the unique points there. Then I came to my conclusion they were made by one and the same individual.
Made by Charles Humphreys.
That is correct.
Sir, you used the term describing latent fingerprints. I think it was of value, as you were describing. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how a fingerprint might be left on a surface and how it might not be left, or how it would not also be subject to identification, even if there was some type of ridge characteristics or points that could be seen?
A latent fingerprint of value to me is at least 8 unique ridge characteristics that I can see in that print. A reason why an individual will leave a latent print of value or not of value is really 3 different reasons. One is the individual themselves. If a person's skin is real dry and clammy, or maybe also from their occupation, example I use a lot of times is people that are bricklayers. If their hands are real rough, chances of them touching something, handling something, or picking something up is not a good indication they will leave good, valuable, latent prints of value. Secondly is the item itself. If the item is nice and smooth, then that's a good surface for leaving a latent print. If the item is something rough or pitted, there again, it won't be a good surface for leaving latent prints. And the third condition of why you will or will not have a latent print is the atmospheric conditions. And once something has been touched and is left out in the elements over a period of time, you will lose your latent print due to weather.
Now, in this particular instance, the lift that you've been referring to was obtained from the sticky surface of the bumper sticker. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
And as far as other lists of identifiable value, say on the other side of the bumper sticker, were you able to find any there?
No, sir.
So, if I understand your testimony, then elements is an object that's left out in the elements.
Objection to the rephrasing, Your Honor.
Objection overruled. Would it be correct to say that the ridge characteristics that would make you have the ability to lift a latent fingerprint would be dissipated, potentially?
It would diminish over a period of time, yes, sir.
Can you touch an object and not leave a latent fingerprint, even if it might be subject, the type that, like a piece of glass?
That is true.
Now, if, let's say I was to touch a piece of glass right now and move my hand across it, could you describe what type of impression, if any, I might leave?
If you had a glass surface, you may leave a streak or a smear across. Sometimes the beginning of a streak, you can have unique ridge characteristics that you could identify, or the end of where the finger was left off. But through the streak motion, usually you will not be able to have a latent print of value.
So just because someone touches an object doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to lift a fingerprint from it.
That is correct.
This time, Your Honor, the state would offer states triple B2 for identification and content therein as state's evidence. We'd also offer Your Honor. Yes, sir. If I can. Judge, can I kind of put them together with paper clips so they don't fall apart?
Yeah. So to the defense, no objection, Your Honor. Let the item be retrieved and marked. Killing stack proper number. No further questions?
No further.
You may inquire.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Stevens, did you prepare any reports?
Yes, sir, I did.
You have them with you today?
Yes, sir, I have my
See
copies.
your report relevant to the Humphreys case? And while you're doing that, let me ask you, these things here, the suitcase and all this, you did not need this, did you?
I don't need.
Oh, I'll get it out of your way. How about this bag? You didn't get this out.
Not unless you need me to identify it for something.
You don't mind if I take a look at it?
Counsel, can you tell me what date you're referring to?
Date of the report?
Yes, sir.
The report dated 5 March 1991. where did you receive the items that you examined in this case? From whom did you receive?
These items I had received from our evidence section in Tallahassee lab. Don't the individuals' names or?
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Henry, Kathy Taft, Doug Freeman,
There is I think, a computer-generated printout on that top exhibit there,
yes, sir.
and it indicates that, and it's relevant to the Humphreys case. The printout relates to the Humphreys case.
Yes, sir.
And 2 individuals are listed on that printout, are they not? 2 names that appear there?
Yes, sir.
Whose names are those 2?
You're talking about the 2 type names?
Yeah.
Okay. First one is Moore Teria, and the other one is Wuornos, Aileen C.
In your report, you indicated that there were certain additional fingerprints that were provided for you to do a comparison of, in addition to Mr. Humphreys, did you not?
In Mr. Humphrey's case?
Yeah, in Mr. Humphreys' case. You got some other fingerprints other than Mr. Humphreys.
Good.
In other related cases, yes. In Mr. Humphrey's case is the only person I compared other than Tyra Moore and Aileen Wuornos.
Okay, so you compared Mr. Humphreys' prints and you also compared Ms. Moore's prints
That's correct.
and Ms. Wuornos' prints.
That is correct.
In the computer-generated printout and in the report that you prepared referring to Tyria Moore, do you know why those prints were given to you to compare in reference to this case?
No, sir, I do not. Just that they were given to me to do a comparison.
Did the law enforcement officers tell you why they gave you Mr. Humphreys' prints to compare?
Only for elimination purposes, I think.
They tell you that Ms. Moore's prints were given to you for elimination purposes.
No, sir, it did not.
What is an elimination purpose?
Basically, elimination prints are inked fingerprints of an individual that either has access to an item or a place or a being that their fingerprints, if found, fingerprints or palm prints, that if they're found, they have a legitimate reason for their prints to be there, to be eliminated.
And so an elimination print is when you're checking to see if somebody who's supposed to be there was there.
Yes, sir. It's basically true.
Other prints are given to you to check whether somebody who's not supposed to be there was there.
Yes, sir, that too.
And one of the prints that was given to you in that regard was Tyria Moore, was it not?
Objection, he has no, this witness, never mind, Jeff, I withdraw.
Right.
Can you just repeat the question, please?
One of the prints that you got that was not given to you for an elimination print purpose was Tyria Moore's in this case.
That is true.
That was given to you by law enforcement officers.
That is true.
Nothing further.
Sir, did you find any prints of Ty Moore in reference to the Humphreys investigation?
Where, Your Honor?
On the bumper sticker, sir.
On the bumper sticker? No, sir. No prints of Tyra Moore on the bumper sticker.
Nothing further, thank you.
Stipulated that there were no more prints on the bumper sticker.
Your Honor, that's not what the witness said.
If you can answer that, it's,
Judge, we leave it at the stand, very short.
anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Judge, we'll stipulate to it.
All right, so they keep the witness may be excused.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Subject to further recall.
I think the witness will be recalled at some point.
All right, you may stand down. Y'all have a way you can contact me.
Yes, sir.
All right, any part you are, we will certainly not discuss that whether the case is considered.